some of the worst abuse of a president and presidential candidate in the history of the United States of America. And it could upend our republic. We have another week of what I consider to be a political hostage situation. This is week 3, it just finished, of the Trump trial in New York over non-crimes. I'll say it once, I said it once, and I'll say it again. There were no crimes that Trump committed. They're making it up as they go along in that criminal trial. He's alleged to have falsified business records. In fact, he didn't falsify them. The business records at issue detailed legal payments as legal payments. And the allegation is that those falsifications, which really weren't falsifications, were all part of a conspiracy. Of course, he's not charged with conspiracy to violate federal campaign finance laws somehow. Now, you may wonder why it is the New York State prosecutors, the county prosecutor up in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, the Soros-backed politician, thinks he can prosecute federal campaign finance violations. A, they're not, and B, he can't. And I've been waiting. I've been watching this trial for days on end. Obviously, I'm not in the courtroom, but I've been reading the reports very carefully, and I've yet to see any evidence of criminal activity presented to the jury. Zero evidence of criminal activity by President Trump. As I tweeted, still waiting for evidence of any criminal conduct in the Trump show trial, and that was on May 1st. And now what is the date? May 3rd? May 4th? Doesn't matter. There's no evidence of criminal activity by President Trump that's been brought forward by the left-wing prosecutor. Again, the #1 prosecutor in that office, working for Bragg here, is a former DOJ official appointed by Joe Biden. It's all you need to know. He moved over to help Bragg manufacture these charges to try to jail Biden's political opponent. So Biden's in deep. His regime is in deep with his fellow Democrats up there in New York. Indeed, it bears repeating because the media won't tell you this. The judge, who is a politician, he's elected, a Democratic Party politician, is an actual contributor to the Joe Biden presidential campaign. I mean, need I say more about how he's compromised? And of course, the way he's conducting the trial has been biased, political. Virtually every major ruling is alien to the very concept of the rule of law. He's allowed for weeks on end testimony that has nothing to do with the price of tea in China. Salacious testimony about President Trump's alleged affairs, why he was talking to the National Enquirer about stories and trying to manage stories, and just what does that have to do with anything? But there was evidence, it looks to me, of criminal activity presented in that trial. And it was the lawyer, Stormy Daniels, who looks like his legal practice in large measure is to represent individuals like Stormy Daniels who have information that could be hurtful to a public figure. And what he does is he goes and represents them, goes to the public figure and says, look, we have this information. You want to keep it quiet? Let's have an agreement and you give us consideration, meaning money, and we'll keep it quiet. He says it's not extortion. Others might disagree. And that's what they did with Trump. And he's done it with other figures as well. So that was like the most significant potential criminal activity, and I'm not even sure it's criminal, but the point is, it looks like Trump was in the trials confirmed what many suspected seemingly, that Trump was the victim of an extortion attempt. So what has all of this resulted in? More threats to put Trump in jail. As I've been alerting you, the goal is to get Trump in jail by hook or by crook. They don't need a conviction because they've got this unconstitutional gag order, which is nearly impossible to interpret, and if broadly interpreted, would shut down the Trump campaign. And the news this week, besides the fact there's still no evidence that Trump committed a crime, is that Judge Merchan fined Trump $9,000 for posting posts on Truth Social on his campaign website, and he ordered him to take him down. And he said, essentially, if you continue to violate my gag order by exercising, he didn't use this language, your First Amendment God-given rights and campaign for president, I'm going to jail you potentially. And this is what he didn't want Americans to see, or he didn't believe Trump had the right to post. These are at least several of the posts that Trump had to take down. So he quotes Jesse Waters, the Fox News host. They're catching undercover liberal activists lying to the judge in order to get on the Trump jury. So he quoted him there. And then he retweeted a quote by Michael Avenatti, who was Stormy Daniels' lawyer for a while, and Avenatti is a criminal too. But you know, he's been saying that this is all wet as well, and Trump said thank you. And then he points out this official statement by Stormy Daniels, who supposedly might be a witness, so he's not allowed to mention her. So Michael Avenatti can make comments one way or the other. Michael Cohen can make comments one way or the other. Stormy Daniels is a potential witness. He's not allowed to defend himself against these allegations. And in the statement Stormy Daniels signed, over the past few weeks, I've been asked countless times to comment on reports of an alleged sexual relationship I had with Donald Trump many, 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 many years ago. The fact of the matter is that each party to this alleged affair denied its existence in 2006, 11, 16, 17, and now again in 2018. I am not denying this affair because I was paid hush money, as has been reported in overseas-owned tabloids. I'm denying this affair because it never happened. So of course Trump is going to be pushing that out. But now Merchan has ordered the suppression of First Amendment speech related to his defense and related to the presidential campaign of the United States of America. And this is my description of it. In a disturbing, unprecedented, and political attack on Trump's First Amendment rights, as I said, Merchan just fined and threatened to jail Trump over his campaign and other free speech that supposedly violates a political and abusive gag order. The Democratic politician ordered the censorship of Americans and voters by ordering Trump to take down the First Amendment protected post on Truth Social and his campaign website. Hashtag election interference, hashtag banana republic, hashtag kangaroo court. You agree? I'm not quite sure what the status of the gag order appeals are. They're obviously in force. So the judge this week has reminded Trump that everything he says can result in him going to jail based on the arbitrary and capricious application of this unconstitutional gag order by his Democratic Party opponent, Judge Merchan. And in effect, Judge Merchan, a Democratic donor, political candidate elected on the Democratic ticket to a judgeship, is now running the Trump campaign. So everything the Trump campaign says is restricted as it relates to this case by Judge Merchan. So he's controlling the Trump campaign. Do you think a local Democratic Party judge in New York should control a political campaign for the presidency through this widely overbroad gag order? Gag orders, which typically, my understanding is, gag orders are meant to protect the defendant in criminal cases. The goal of the process in New York, or in a criminal case, is to ensure that the defendant's rights are protected. The defendant is presumed innocent. Again, presumed innocent. And let me say this for the record. Trump is an innocent man. And a judge is going to punish him for maintaining his innocence in public, and he could be jailed for his campaign doing the same in a presidential election. And in the meantime, as Trump is held political hostage up in New York, President Biden's able to go around campaigning unhindered. I mean, Keith Jarrett had a tweet or a column the other day, or my friend over at Fox News. He does a good job analyzing all of this. I think we have the tweet. Parody of a trial. Confuse the jury with jargon and create the appearance of illegality that doesn't actually exist. And that's what's going on in the trial. It's an unconscionable breach of ethics and a violation of a prosecutor's principal duty to see that justice is done fairly and impartially. Sadly, too, many prosecutors think their job is to gain a conviction by hook or by crook. Bragg stands as the poster child for amoral, ruthlessness. I agree. They're just throwing out all this dirt that has the appearance of, it's basically gossip. It's the Gossip Girl trial. And somehow Trump is guilty because of all this salaciousness they're talking about. I mean, as it relates to criminal activity as alleged in an indictment, there's no tie, and Judge Merchant is just letting it happen. It's a kangaroo court. It's a show trial. And I'd like to know what Republicans are doing, that they're allowing this to go on with virtually no comment. I don't understand it. Honest Democrats should be opposed to it as well. I mean, Speaker Mike Johnson went up to Columbia, which I thought was a good move. He should have stopped in New York. Maybe the trial wasn't going on, but he could go up to New York and go to the trial and show his support. But I would think it would be good for other Republicans and honest politicians of either party to go up and show their support and take a stand by being present in court for President Trump in the face of this abuse of his civil rights. And believe you me, Judicial Watch has multiple Freedom of Information Act requests over this abuse of Trump. We have multiple lawsuits. So I'm not just here talking about it. I mean, we've sued Bragg already for records. Got records showing he was spending a lot of taxpayer money trying to avoid testifying to Congress by hiring private lawyers. Kind of reminds me of a little bit of Fannie Willis. So that's where we stand with the Trump trials. In the meantime, I talked about what was going on as it relates to the Trump trials over on Fox News. I was on last week. Let's push that one out.
Let's dig into the details of what went down today in court with Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. Okay, I'd love talking to you about this because I know you like to get into the weeds, but I love to get your reaction to what other legal scholars are saying about what we've been watching here. This is from Jonathan Turley, a man that you know very well. I want to get your reaction to what he said today, talking about the wisdom of even A, having this circumstance play out the way it is, and B, where we are now and where we're going. Listen to this.
This is 8 days that we've all been sitting in this courthouse. This is all a Biden indictment. It's in order to try and win an election, political opponent, and nothing like this has ever happened. 8 days.
We're left on Friday wondering what's the intelligent design here towards conviction. And one thing that would help if you would just tell us what's the crime.
He nails it. We talked about this for just a bit with Alex Hoyer. This is federal from my perspective in my brief legal training. It seems mighty federal to me. So what's the crime here, and how does Mr. Bragg get this one over the finish line?
Well, hopefully it's a jury, from his perspective, a jury that's anti-Trump, and just putting salacious material out there about President Trump, they're thinking would be sufficient. For those of us concerned about the rule of law, Turley's absolutely right. There are no crimes here. This is an indictment about nothing. This whole week has been like an MSNBC fever dream played out in a courtroom, where they're asking this publisher questions about non-crimes. So it's a crime for politicians to communicate with members of the media about stories they don't want to run. I tell you, if that's the new rule, every politician here in D.C. is going to face criminal charges for not reporting those communications on federal election forms. It can't be the law, and it isn't the law. They're making it up as they go along. We're still not sure what the crimes are beyond detailing in his ledger a legal expense is a legal expense. This is a terrible abuse of power, and it's disturbing that the court and Judge Merchan has allowed it to even get this far.
But here's what I don't understand. I understand your point of view. It makes sense to me, and yet I watch legal analysts all day long on other networks suspend all disbelief. They simply go out there and they say, yep, looks like a crime is happening here, and they really don't seem to be backing up and saying, this is an abuse of power. If we're not careful, this will happen in other states. I mean, who's to say this doesn't happen to, say, President Biden when he's out of office? There could be some judge in Texas or some other state that decides on some, as some people have called it, trumped up charges related to whatever, and say, you know what, we're just going to bring up dirt.
Well, that's the danger when you have this normalization of the weaponization of government to go after your political opponents.
Right.
All bets could potentially be off, and it will disrupt the country because, as you say, you could have Republican attorney generals start targeting Biden.
Of course you can.
And you know, Biden should be praying that the Supreme Court agrees with Trump, because I can guarantee you there'd be many Republican attorney generals in the future who would want to go after him on criminal charges based on what he's doing right now.
100% believe that. Tom Fitton, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
You're
Have
welcome.
a great weekend. We'll see you again soon.
And here's a truth from Trump. Trump slams corrupt Judge Merchan and the kangaroo court process run by Democratic Party politicians in New York City. As Trump wrote, it's a total witch hunt, hours of sitting down and listening to nothing except exoneration and lies. The trial is going like a speeding bullet because the judge is working hard to make all of his friends happy. Merchan is rigged, crooked, and above all, without question, conflicted. It's a disgrace to the country. They've taken away my right to free speech, election interference. I agree with Trump's analysis 100%. And I tell you, we need more honest folks here in Washington, D.C., who, unfortunately, there aren't too many of, who see this corruption for what it is. Some of the worst abuse of a president and presidential candidate in the history of the United States of America. And it could upend our republic. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.